beyond the capacity of small undertakings. And I just want to mention here, the whole budgetary system, they need a huge amount of staff members also, and skilled staff members also, which would be a very much expensive things also. So budgeting cannot take the position of management, but it is only an instrument of management. So that means it's not an optional of a management, but it is just for an using for a management. So it sometimes leads to produce conflicts among the managers, as each of them are skilled and intellectual, and to take a credit to achieve the budget's success. Simple preparation of budget will not ensure its proper implementation. That means you need to identify the budget, understanding the requirements, the informations. You have to study properly, you have to understand properly, and then you are going to prepare. Then and then only the budgetary planning would be successful. The installation and function of a budgetary control system, it's very costly, as I already mentioned. It requires the huge number of staff members and specialized and skilled staff members. So these are the limitations of a budgetary control. Here, essentials of effective budgeting. Essentials of effective budgeting would be helpful to plan and prepare a budget in a systematic way. But what are the things is required when you are actually preparing a budget? Let's start with this first point. Support of a top level management. It means that when you are preparing a budget and when you are starting to preparation of budget, it requires to considerations by every member of the management. Not only is actually supporting, but also the impulsion and direction should also come from the top level management. In that sense only, budget preparations would be very effective. Second is teamwork. This is an essential requirement if the budgets are ready from the bottom of a grassroots manner. So that means that according to the teamwork, if you are working in a grassroots manner, it would be working in a very aggressively and systematically. Next is realistic objective. The budget figures should be realistic and represent logically attainable goals. That means the goals which are easy to achieve is not to be mean, but the goals which are necessary to at least attainable. That means the certain goals which you are actually planned and budgeted, which may be difficult or maybe not to achieve also, cannot be planned. Otherwise it would be affected on a reverse impact on employees, and they are maybe demotivated. Next is excellent reporting system. Reports comparing the budgets and actual results should be promptly prepared and special attentions focused on a significant exceptions. Next is structure of budget team. Now you need to design a budget team, and the person who are going to involve in that team are supposed to be preparing a budget. So this team receives all the informations of past years, and on the basis of the past years, what are to be supposed to be changed in the future, and they will plan forecast and targets of each department, each task, as well as periodic reports, and confirm the final acceptance of respected targets in the form of a master budget. This is what all about a structure budget team. The next is integration with the standard costing system, where the standard costing system is also used. It should be completely integrated with the budget program in respect of both budget preparations and variance analysis. So ultimately the standard costing system would be very much cooperative and integrated for the preparation of budget. And another is inspirational approach. All the employees of staff other than executives should be strongly and properly inspired towards the budgetary message and budgetary control. Now see the classification of budget. It extent of budgeting activities. There are varieties of budgets to be prepared on the basis of firm and organization to organization. In a smaller case, in smaller organizations, they may be prepared a self-forecasting, so that means the sales forecasting, a production budget, or maybe a cash budget. But in a larger scale or a larger organizations, they may be prepared a master budget which includes almost all the budgets. Budgets can be classified into a different ways in a different point of view. See here, this is a classification of budget. Here in the classification of budget, there are three major classifications. One is a functional classification. Under that functional classifications, there are sales budget, production budget, raw material, purchase, labor, these are the functions. Ultimately, all these are the functional activity in the organization, and company wanted to know that what type of changes occurred in these functions, and they want to control these functions on the basis of certain parameters and limitations. That's why they prepared these functional budgets. Here the flexibility budget is the second budget. In case of a flexibility, the possibility two type of budgets. One is a fixed budget and other one is a flexible budget. And in case of a time budget, maybe they will prepare a long term, short term, current and rolling. So here we are going to start one by one all the different type of budgets. Let's begin with the first functional classification, and under the functional classifications we'll discuss first as sales budget. The sales budget is an estimate of a total sales which may be articulated in financial or quantitative terms. That means the company wanted to know that under this sales budget, how much amount of total possibilities of sales as well as how much amount of total quantity of sales would be possible. It is normally forms the fundamental basis on which all other budgets are constructed. So that means it is almost similar that the other budgets are constructed. We have some factors to be considered for preparing a sales budget, like study of past sales to determine trends in the market. So on the basis of a few past trends, we will be getting an idea what would be the possible in future. Estimates made by salesmen various markets of a company products. That means through the market survey by the salesman, the company would get an idea which product would be more and more comprehensive sale in the market. Changes of a business policy and method, so that would be also considered under the sales. Maybe changing of sales price, maybe a product mix, marketing mix, maybe the changing of a government policy, control, rules and other financial situations are related to a sales. So these are the things to be considered under the sales budget. Second is production budget. Production budget is prepared on the basis of estimated production for budget period. So that means the company needs to identify that how much amount of the production capacity, and on the basis of the production capacity they have to design their production of a budget. So usually the production budget is based on the sales budget. Always, because of the company has some relevance, how much amount of sales may be possible in the future. On the basis of that estimated sales, they may be going to do for the production. At the time of preparing the budget, the production manager will consider the physical facilities like plant, power, factory, space, material, labor. These are the items to be necessary to evaluate at the time of production. So production may be calculated in the sense of units to be produced is equal to desired closing stock with the finished goods plus budgeted sales minus beginning stock of finished goods. The budget shows the estimated cost of production. The production budget demonstrates the capacity of the production. Why? But listen, all the time it is not necessary that whatever the production budget it shows, it is always understood that this is a capacity carried by the company. Sometimes maybe the people were preparing a budget at a higher level also, but it most probably assume that the whatever it is forecasting, it is almost similar to their capacity. So this capacity of productions are expressed in terms of costing production and cost budgets. The cost of production is shown in detail in the respect of material cost, labor cost and overheads. So the next is raw material budget. Under this raw material budget, the direct material is budget prepared with an intention to determine a standard material cost per unit, and consequently it involves quantities to be used as per the rate per unit. So the raw material budget has to be defined on the basis of what amount of cost per unit is incurred and what amount of the material per unit has been involved. So the budget shows the estimated quantity of all the raw materials and components needed for production. Some purposes to be considered under the heading of a raw material, like it supports the purchasing department in scheduling the purchases. That means they need to identify and they need to design a time structure of a purchasing of raw material in the business. Requirement of raw materials is decided on the basis of a production budget. So on the basis of the production budget, the amount of the requirement and requisition slip has been designed on the basis of a production budget. It provides data for raw material control and helps in deciding terms and conditions of purchase like credit purchase, cash purchase and payment periods, etc. under this raw material budget. Moving to the next budget is purchase budget. Strategic planning of purchases offers one of the most important areas of reduction cost in many concerns. That means the purchase budget is ultimately helpful to design your total amount of purchasing capacity available with your cash liquidity and the cash concern. This will consist of a direct and indirect material services. Main object and purposes of preparing for the purchase budget is it designates cash requirements. So I told you in that case it is directly affected with the cash management and cash budget. So it designates with the cash requirements in respect of purchase to be made during the budget period. It is facilitates the purchasing department to plan its operation in time in respect of purchases so that long-term forward contracts may be organized. Next is labor budget. Human resources are highly expensive item in the operations of an enterprise. So here, hence like other factors of production, the management should find out in advance personal requirements for various jobs in the enterprises. So in that case, the company has to identify that which type of skilled and unskilled labor is required, then how many number of labor is required, what amount of minimum labor and maximum labor to be paid to the people, and the budget may be classified into the requirement of budget and labor requirement budget. Next is production overhead budget. So here in the case of overhead budgets, it's directly related with the production overhead budget. The manufacturing overheads budget includes direct material, direct labor and direct expenses. So in that case, the production budget would be affected with all the type of the prime cost expenditures, major production and manufacturing expenses. In that case, the amount of fixed, variable and semi-variable to be incurred during the year during the budgeted period, we need to concern in the overhead budget. It's reflect how much amount has been maintained in the business for the production is concerned. Moving to the next budget is selling and distribution budget. The selling and distribution budget has to be prepared by the selling and distribution department, and this budget is estimating of the cost of selling, advertising, delivering, packing, designing and other type of selling and distribution expenses during the period of time. The budget is very closely associated to sales budget, in the logic that the sales forecasting significantly influence the forecast of these expenses. Because of advertising is based on sales, packing and attractiveness of the particular product, it's also depend on the sales. So that's why the sales manager is looking after the whole concern for designing the sales and distribution budget on the basis of sales. Next is administrative budget, also an administrative cost budget. This budget includes the administrative cost for non-manufacturing business activity like director fees, managing directors salaries, office expenses and other type of salaries in the offices, lighting, depreciations and other part of an expenses are to be considered under this administration cost budget. Most of these expenses are fixed, so that should not be too difficult to forecast it. Here the next is capital expenditure budget. This budget stands for the expenditure of all the type of fixed costs to be purchased during the period of budget. In that case, the company has to identify during the normal situation the how much amount of asset is required for the longer period than the understanding of a functional budget. So it includes such items like buildings, land, change of machinery and other intangible assets like patents and other things. So this is all about a part of capital expenditure budget. Now here, as per the functional classifications, we are moving to the last part, that is cash budget. The cash budget is a sketch of the business estimates for the cash inflows and outflows over a period of time, over a specific period of time. Ultimately, the cash budget is influenced by all these activities. Because of ultimately this cash budget has to represent all the different type of activities under this particular budget. Cash budget is one of the most important and one of the last to be prepared. It is a detailed projection of cash receipts from all the sources for cash payments, cash receipts, all purposes and